counter narrative to this idea that failure isn't cool in business. You know what I mean? It's like if your business dies, you are a failure. And
yes.
That's not true.
Hello, everyone. So, what happens when you have a podcast and you meet all these high flyers, and you learn so much from them, right? And then what happens when you take a leap of faith and you change your life and move to another country? And then what happens when you learn all these secrets of influence and you failed a lot of times, I'm sure? Well, I don't know what happens. We're going to have to ask Matt, my beautiful guest today, and we'll take it from there. So first of all, how are you today, Matt?
I'm all right. I'm having a bit of a tough day today personally, but, I'm prepared to break fear and, chase that freedom,
Well, thank you, Matt. And hopefully after this conversation, you'll feel a little bit better, right?
I'm pretty sure.
That would be a good thing. Tell us, Matt, a bit about who Matt is in like 3 minutes.
Yeah. It's a big question, right? It's kind of like, who are you? I think there's things that you're known for, like my show, as an example, and my books and whatever. But I think who I am, probably a flawed human being that's just looking to try and make a difference to humanity in my own small way, So that's really what I'm about. Father of two, husband. And my whole thing is really about influence, and that's really about elevating others. And so that's why I started the Matt Brown Show like 10 years ago. And it's now in the top 2.5% of all podcasts globally. So it's been a real journey, to find a space or a freedom, if you like, to own, I'm grateful to be where I am.
Wow, that's exciting. 10 years ago, and that's an amazing feat to be able to have built it over 10 years. And I'm going to just put this in because we have to. I'm sure everyone's noticed that you are from South Africa, right? And you've built this. Well, you know what? We kindred spirits from that perspective. But now you're in the States. And that's just by the way, but you've built this over 10 years. What kind of fears did you have to work through to get to this point?
Probably the most obvious one in the beginning was just a fear of saying the wrong thing, or asking the wrong question. And so when I started the show, I used to script everything right down to the, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because God forbid I made a mistake, or I misspoke or something. But at that, that changed over time. My intention was never to do 800 interviews. It was only to do 3. But I think the show has really been like probably the most transformative tool in my life ever. My life wouldn't be what it is. I wouldn't be in the States without the show. I wouldn't have the network that I have without the show. And that's all through a process of, getting over my own insecurities, I suppose. And then, I've sold out loads of shows in South Africa, and now I had to stand up on stage in front of 500 people with CNBC broadcasting, the show live to 52 countries around the world. And that puts you in the spotlight. It's a different type of thing. It's like, interviewing one person is very different to, leading a conversation where whatever is happening is being, truly reaching a lot of people. And I suppose that was another one, which was, getting over that, am I good enough? Sort of a fear, if you like. But so many other things, I'm an introvert. I don't really like people very much. I love people I know and trust, but sitting in front of a CEO or whoever it is and trying to interview him or her for an hour isn't exactly something that came naturally to me. And so, I had to find my own voice. And so even today I do a lot of thought leadership. And it's funny because I also have a fear of judgment, so if I don't care what I say on my show, I really don't. And I have provocative views in different, ideas, especially in the world of business, but I don't care what anyone thinks about what I say on my show. But if I put out a thought leadership video on LinkedIn, I'm like scared someone's going to come and judge me for it. You know what I mean? So I don't understand why that is the case. But it's a thing. But I think all of us have these sorts of insecurities. Fear of judgment, fear of failure. I've also failed at business. I literally wrote a book, Secrets of Fail, which is interviews I did with CEOs, all about their epic fuck ups, basically. And so everyone's walking around with these stories, right? And these questions like, what are my gifts? What actions should I take? Who should I take these actions with? And it's all about a journey to somewhere, And so, as I say, you have to start somewhere, Otherwise you don't get over your fear of judgment, your fear of failure, your fear of whatever, public speaking or being a host. I never saw myself as being in the public eye, ever. But then all of a sudden there I was. But as I say, it's if I think about the journey that I've been on and how many of these things I've overcome, it's if I hadn't made that choice to start, like I wouldn't have what I have, and I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yes. That's always the thing, right? To just take that first step. But that's always the most difficult, because I know when I started my podcast, it's like 2 years ago. It's new, right? I hated video. I was terrified. So it took me a while. And then one day I thought, well, you know what? Hey, what's the worst that can happen? At the end of the day, when you realize that no one really cares about you anyway, like they're so busy, everyone's so busy thinking about themselves and in their phones and whatever, that tough. Whatever it is. But that fear of judgment is huge. Have you ever got over that?
No.
And will you ever get over it?
No. Or maybe, I don't know. I never really cared about what people thought about me, And when I moved to the States, unfortunately, I had a business there, and it's kind of like I couldn't run it from the States, so I handed it over to a management team, and I was like, "Look, don't crash the car." And unfortunately, the car did crash, and a lot of people lost their jobs. But people don't understand that when a business dies, you don't get a salary. It's not possible anymore. And unfortunately, I took a lot of shit on social media. In fact, even a year and a half later, I'm still getting trolled on social media by some people who don't know the truth, who think they know because they heard rumors, or they made up stories or whatever. And so when you get trolled on social media, especially, it's not like you're being judged in private, you're being judged in public. So it's the courts of public opinion, if you know what I mean. But that goes with the territory. I can't control those people. You know what? And fuck what they think. They don't know what really went on. Or the difference in contribution that we made to, those 55 people and their families over like a 4 or 5 year period. So I guess it just goes with the territory. You just have to deal with that stuff and try and be authentic and transparent. But I don't need to address what people say. Do you see what I mean? I don't need to lower myself down to someone who's clearly emotional and upset, when they're not even prepared to tell me who they are. You see what I mean? It's like, well, tell me who you are first, rather than try and, slander me and tarnish my reputation on social media. What does that say about you, actually?
Yes.
These are all fears. Whether I'll get over it, probably not. I think it's human, right? You'd be a bit of a stonewaller if these triggers, which is what I call them, and they're emotional triggers, that you trigger, dude. What are you going to do? You can't stop the trigger. You triggered. Someone's trolling you on social, but it's really about how you respond to that, and having that kind of mental fortitude to choose or make the right decisions for yourself. And I think that's really what freedom is, isn't it? It's about having that ability to make choices that are in your own, or that are incongruent with your values and who you are and the difference that you want to make. Because I think they're our ultimate power.
Yes, I agree with you, and it's very difficult to come to those terms, because you brought up most of the time as thinking like, it's bad to think for yourself. You have to think about others first before you think about yourself. And it's such a mind shift to come back and realize, whoa, if I don't think about myself and I don't take care of myself, I'm useless, really. But you have to have that mind shift. And and then everything changes within your life. And then again, just a side note, and I'm go back to the trolls. It's interesting how those people are just people who know, sitting in a dark room that have nothing better to do and are really feeling bad about themselves. And on some level, I guess you need to just accept that for them and let them carry on. But it's also a good thing for you, because it shows that you actually are making a difference, because they are standing up to, they're seeing you and they have to say something. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess so. It's at the time it kind of sucks though, yeah. Because you have to actually feel the feelings, and you actually like, what? And you get angry and then you get feelings of resentment. It's like, who are these people?
Yes.
What do they know? As I say, if you're saying these sorts of things, if I'm saying something negative about someone, I'll put my name there. My name is Matt Brown. Here's why I don't agree with you for these reasons. But if you're creating fake accounts just to have a go, I don't think that's necessarily the right thing, is it? But that's the world we live in today. People are in these dark corners of the rooms, and they feel like they can just say what they want to say. And while that's fine, I think there's context is really important, and the way that you engage in differing points of view is important.
Yes. So what they do is they just take out that piece and they just create their own narrative around it, which is what it is. But I guess also if you take it to a different level and you think about, well, maybe I can learn something from this. Let's see if we can take a blessing out of this and move on. I guess that's probably the best way to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair, like, why is it still an issue for you 18 months later? You know what I mean? I don't understand. But to your point, what can I learn from it? Well, it's to not care about trolls and what they say.
Yes.
You can't control other people. You can only control who you are and how you respond. And maybe you don't respond.
Yes. Yes.
But it's an experience thing. Like, I think if you truly influencing people or markets, or you have a big personal brand or a show like I do, you're in the public eye. You can't not be. So what are you going to do? You're going to complain about it, or you're going to surrender to it, accept it, and move on?
Yes, I agree with you. And sometimes the best thing is to just ignore them, because they just want attention anyway. It's like a small child, when they're having a tantrum. If you ignore them, they realize, I can't get the attention anymore, and move on to someone else.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating for me, because it's the stories that they make up, that's really quite creative. I'm like, wow, that's really creative. It's really well done. But like Elon says, he's like, I don't mind being hated, but he wouldn't be who he is if there wasn't a faction that hated him.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Whether that's Bob, the CEO of Disney, or whether that's, the CEO of General Motors, but I'm pretty sure the CEO of Porsche hates him now after the Cybertruck launch. I don't know whether you saw that, where they were doing a quarter-mile drag race, and then the Cybertruck beat a 911, towing a 911. So if I was the CEO of Porsche, I'd be seriously pissed off, But that's Elon, right? That's his thing. So
yes,
you might not like me, but that's who you are. That's who he is. And I think if you just stay congruent to that, then nothing else matters.
Yes. I like that, because you know who you are. So that's all that matters. So of course you get triggered, but you just move on with with your life. You're not going to let them stall you, because he just carries on. It's quite interesting to watch all his antics, but that's a whole different other thing. Now tell me a bit, Matt, about your failures, because another one of your books is Your Secret of the #Fail. And again, we're all so afraid to fail because of our school system or whatever. You know what, you fail, you get left behind, or you fail class, or whatever it is. And we branded and we shamed for failing. And yet on some level, if we don't try anything, how are we going to ever know if we can do it? And of course we'll fail. If we don't try anything, then we won't fail, right? So
yeah, so that's why I did I do these series. You know, it's like a Netflix series. So I do a series on my show, and we tackle like specific things. So it might be venture capital investing, or it might be failure in business, or it might be about influence now, or it might be about whatever. You know, so I take on narratives basically that I think need to change. So, for instance, as you said, one of those, if you go to LinkedIn, what do you see? You see a whole bunch of success, you know, companies being bought and sold, mergers, this and that, awards being won, jobs, you know, being awarded, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it creates this idea that everyone's just successful. So it's depressing. If you don't feel like you are a success, what does that say about you? And behind all that facade, though, is a whole bunch of failures. So as an example, it becomes, you know, it's 15 years of failure to become an overnight success. And that's what I wanted to do, was just paint a counter narrative to this idea that failure isn't cool in business. You know what I mean? It's like, if your business dies, you are a failure. And that's not true. Like, I've had, you know, founded 14 startups over the last 25 years, sold a couple, but everything else died. And I remember when I was 26, I sold my first business, which was a record label. So I thought I could walk on water. And so luckily the universe was going to fix that for me. So the next business failed. And I just felt like a failure. I was like, I was like, oh, I failed. And it took many, many years later, right, for me to get over that shit. And it actually happened in an interview with a mentor of mine. And he was telling me a story about his business failure, one of his first ones. So he borrowed money from an investor, and he started the New York sausage factory. And unfortunately, that business died. And so he met with his mentor, or his investor, and he said, you know, whatever it takes, I'm going to pay you back every single cent. And he got up from the table, and his investor like slammed his fist down on the table and said, "Sit down." And so he sat down, and then he said to him, "Did I back you, or did I back the business?" And he said, "You backed me." And he said, "Yes, I did back you. And if you get up from here and you leave this room, then you would have failed." And he said, the point to that story is, when a business fails, it's not you that failed. It's just the business that failed. What is a business? Business is a legal entity with a bunch of fancy accounting statements, P&L, balance sheet, whatever, and some people. And unfortunately, some businesses die. In fact, 99% of all startups die within 4 years. So imagine if we could shift that association, that when a business fails, it's not you. You didn't fail. It's just the business. It ran out of cash flow. So that's why it died. Or maybe you quit because you didn't love the business or whatever. But I think if it's like the Silicon Valley narrative, right? Where you see all these headlines, you know, blah, blah, blah. This company raises 6.2 at $100 million valuation, blah, blah, blah. But for every one of those headlines, there's hundreds of thousands of crushed dreams. So what about them? You know, because if you can get them to start another business and feel like, oh, I learned a lot from that business failure, what do you then do? You move on. You start another one. Yes, you might have some debts. Maybe you can't start a business for a period of time. But set your intention that that's what you will do. But I think a lot of people, they don't. They go, oh shit, I failed at business, and so I'm a failure, and so I'm not good enough, and so I'm never going to start another business again. And that's not a consequence that I want people to have, because that was me. I was that train wreck, and as I say, it took a long time to figure out that perspective, that it's not you that failed, it's just the business.
I like that. That whole mind shift makes such a difference, because then you can take it out of yourself, put it in front of you, and unpack it and see, well, hey, this is how I did this. Maybe I can change that, or maybe I can change the other thing. So I love that. Thank you, Matt. I just want to go back, something you said about maybe you lost love for the business. What is your take on doing a business that you love, like doing, so changing a passion project into a business? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think probably the worst sin is to build a successful business that you hate. And I've been there. And it's not a great thing, because what do you then do? Do you sell it? You can't walk away from it, because you still are the business. People work with you, and then they buy into you and your vision. So it's difficult at that point, especially if you miss the timing of the market to sell something. If your revenues are dip for one quarter, you're screwed. The acquirers will look at it for any reason not to pay you what you're worth, or to buy you at all. So how do you avoid that situation? Well, what most startups do, or founders do, is that they look for a market, or a gap in the market, actually. They go, AI, what's the gap? So then unfortunately, they find a market in the gap also. So then they build something, they go raise some money, and then they wind up, pursuing the wrong vision, or trying to solve the wrong problem, because they just wanted to get rich. You see what I mean? Build an AI company and, list it and take it for IPO, but very few actually do that. So what I found works really well is basically asking two questions. First one is, what sucks for me? What sucks for me? And the second question is, does it suck for a lot of other people? And so then you now know the problem intimately. You're not trying to figure out what AI looks like in a new context. You know what the problem is. You have this issue. And so when you talk about that issue, you know that problem intimately. You can talk about it passionately. You can convince people that you're the one to solve it, because you had that problem. 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about podcasting. You see what I mean? But now look, what I now know. So I think the point is, like, to grow where you planted. Like, look around you. If you think about a 24-hour day, what sucks for you the most? Is it your relationship with your kids, relationship with your wife? Is it your relationship with yourself? Is it your relationship with your business? Whatever, and then say, well, how many other people really suffer with the relationship with themselves? You see? And then you can build a solution around that, that's based on your own experience. And so I think that's what influences people. It's having a true insight into a problem, and you can talk about it clearly. You're not trying to connect dots of some future AI thing. You see what I mean? So does it suck for you? Does it suck for a lot of other people? And I think if you get those answers right, then you'll build a business that you love.
I love that too, because now with AI, because you talk a lot about influence, obviously, and I think it's Gary Vee who's talking about that's the new currency. I mean, we're not even only him. We know that's the new currency, right? The influence and and being in front of people and authenticity and all that. How do you take this? Like, you've got a new AI, and it's like growing so quickly. Every day something new. It's like, whoa! How do you keep up with all these things that AI is doing? I just saw this morning a video about Bard. The things that AI can do is amazing. It's like, whoa. How do you think that's going to influence or influence, sorry, excuse the pun, the influencing space. And do you think that people are going to realize that it's like, you know what, I need authenticity here. I'm tired of this AI stuff.
So everyone's talking about the technology. If you think about most startups now, they're all AI enabled, aren't they? They weren't AI enabled 18 months ago, but now they are. And so everyone's jumping on the AI technology bandwagon, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's incredibly powerful technology, but it's more about the use case for it. In other words, what can you do with it? That's what you should be marketing, right? So what happens is that most businesses or founders or owners, whatever, they market the problem or the solution, but they don't market their value. So they'll go, hey, you want to scale your influence? Here's an AI-enabled thing that does a super ding-dong wah-wah, and that's why you should do business with us. So in my case, if I wanted to market the problem, I'd go to market with a message like, hey, you're a business owner. Would you like to get your story out into a worldwide market? Solution, I'll interview you on the Map Round show for an hour, and you can promote your business and its products and its services. But is that my value? What's my real value? And so the answer to that is, well, it's the 800 interviews that I've done. That's my value. That's because I'm rich in perspective. And so what we're actually doing now is we're taking all those interviews, we're transcribing them and loading them up into a custom GPT app where I can now market my true value, which is, what if you could access the minds of 800 CEOs with aggregate revenues of over $100 billion? And imagine you could access all of those minds in a fraction of a second. What would that be worth to you, Mr. Entrepreneur? See, so now what does that say about my influence or my ability to influence? I promise you, if I drop that, or when that message drops, it's going to resonate with a lot of people because, one, it's all unique knowledge capital, right? It's got nothing to do with what GPT's been trained on. It's real world shit, real world stuff that comes from the minds of real people, And so now I'm able to influence people. I mean, my company, Showworks Media, we're able to produce a book, for instance, a best-selling book, 300% faster than anyone else in the US. And we use that, we use an operating model that combines content with artificial generative intelligence. So in other words, you're not writing the book, you're taking video content, loading that up into AGI so that you can create a manuscript literally within a matter of hours. And then, of course, the marketing happens. So books are a great tool to influence people. So this is kind of, you see what I'm saying? It's about the value. It's the use case, not the technology itself that, is going to scale anyone's influence in the future.
I love that. So it's the creativity. It's not just because, especially because we know about LinkedIn, you just get slammed with the same old people are just doing the same things, and they're trying to sell the AI. So I like that. Like everything, just change it and put your spin on it, become creative, and you can use it for whatever. So tell me about this fear, and that's beautiful, and it's a unique perspective. And of course, there's I'm sure a few people that are coming up with this, but most people are still in that fear mode. Tell me a bit about the fear of AI. What's your spin on that?
Well, it's like a double-edged sword, right? It's either going to cut really well or positively, or it's not, or it might do both. In other words, there's advantages and disadvantages to this. I mean, I think humanity needs artificial intelligence, quite frankly. We need help. and to work with a machine that's way more intelligent than you, that can help you. I mean, I was thinking about becoming a securities trader for, basically sitting in the middle between startups who need money and a venture capital network. But to do that legally, you have to have a securities license. So I went to, I think it was like Solomon's or something. It was like an online training course, and I paid, whatever the amount of money was, and I started learning. So I don't know. I can just tell you now, it's a whole different world when you get into legalese and financial terms and bonds and this kind of stuff and different security structures. It literally melts your fucking brain. It's probably the hardest stuff to learn because it's not like passion stuff. It's just you have to pass an exam. So you never actually use that stuff later. You just have to know this massive body of work. So with all these different terms and stuff, I was like, what is this? Like, I don't understand this. And I read it and I reread it and I read it again. I still don't understand it. And I'm like an averagely intelligent man, right? So then instead of like dealing with their support team, who were also not very great at helping concepts land for me, I went to GPT and I was like, explain this to me. And I found that AI was a way better educator because it would go into all sorts of detail and scenarios and stuff. And you're like, oh, so that's what it means. Well, why didn't they just say so? So AI's got some incredible applications in the sense of accelerating education and giving us access to ideas maybe or information or unstructured information in a structured way now that we didn't have before, and getting access to that in a very quick fashion. So, I mean, it's just education's one thing. But the whole world will change like faster than I think we faster than I think we realize. And so who knows? It's a question that no one really has an answer to. I mean, when are we going to get to artificial general intelligence? Like hectic. That's like a machine that's smarter than all of humanity combined. And then what?
Wow.
What happens then? What will startups then be able to do with that? I mean, it's probably going to displace a lot of AI-enabled startups. You know what I mean? Because now it's opened up a whole other paradigm for what's possible. But self-driving cars reduces human deaths on roads. Humans are terrible drivers. SpaceX, multiplanetary species, AI basically learns how to land a rocket and to make them reusable. So I think AI is a very needed thing for humanity, but obviously you could have two Russians or two people sitting in Cameroon building something, that suddenly becomes self-aware. And then, it's like the new Mission Impossible film. I don't know whether you've seen that, where this AGI basically gets into all the world's security systems without anyone knowing. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, then what? Then what? So.
It's mind blowing, but then your imagination just, because I mean you're an author as well, right? I'm sure your imagination just goes like, whoa, it can go anywhere, and it's exciting on some level. And of course, it depends from your perspective, right? So you can have it as exciting, or you can be afraid of it and sit in a little corner and shake, and that's your decision, and that's your prerogative, right? So yes, I love that. I'm going to go back again and ask you, what about? Do you think AI will ever become self-aware? Because we human, right? And we have our own responsibility. If we take responsibility for our lives and we become self-aware, we can grow ourselves and our business much easier, right? Or in our family, whatever it is. Do you think, and I know this is just off the cuff, right? Do you think that AI would ever get to that point?
It has to. It has to. I mean, we're literally training it to think like ourselves. And there was that Google engineer that claimed that Google's AI was sentient, meaning it had a consciousness of its own. It could understand emotions. I mean, what does self-aware mean for an AI? You're able to embody a human fully. Meaning you feel, well, this is the thing. I had this conversation the other day. I was like, do you think AI, I can't remember the exact question, but it's kind of like, do you think AI could ever replicate a human? Right? So if you think about Neuralink sitting in your brain and you're able to talk to an AI system and it takes over your body, right? And your mind, do you think that that clone of yourself, do you think that AI would be able to embody everything that you are? And I don't think it can ever get there. It depends on how you define it. But I don't think it can. How can a machine understand what it means to suffer or to be persecuted? Right? They don't, like, it intellectually would understand, but it would never be able to feel those things. And it could behave like it understands, but it's a machine. It can never really understand. It won't. But then, it could decide that humans are bad, and now it has its own purpose. But no, I don't think it can ever truly feel what we feel, and I think that's what makes us different, or maybe gives us a competitive advantage in some way. But we'll see. I don't think it can ever fully replace Matt Brown. I mean, we're actually playing around now with avatars. So getting Matt Brown to not be there, but maybe to conduct interviews. I mean, wouldn't that be cool? I could then do 100,000 interviews in a year. Think about that.
Ah, that would be very cool. That would be very cool.
But it's not perfect. I mean, my team cloned me the other day. Like, they sent me one. Like, I send it to you, and it's like, don't get scared, but this whole thing was created with AI. And I sent it to all my friends, and they were like, "No way, is this really AI?" And it sort of had my voice, but it was literally this view, like, of me in the studio and me talking without me actually being there. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So things like that. It would never really be me. I mean, another one, like, would I feel okay with the fact that an avatar of mine in AI was interviewing someone without me there? Even if it had all my perspective and my knowledge, and it knew how I thought, and it knew how I spoke, and it knew how I asked questions, would I be okay with me not being there? Would you be okay if you knew that an AI was interviewing you? You see what I mean?
Yeah, yes. So and will it have the ability to, like, just change the subject, or to feel the person on the other side? Of course, because it's different, right? And on the other hand, isn't that what this whole podcasting is about anyway, is to connect with people and to have the conversation?
Yeah.
So
connect with someone.
Yes. Yes.
So again, it's like how you use it in a way that's congruent with your values. So, for instance, I don't think I'd be comfortable with that, but I would be comfortable with 1 million entrepreneurs talking to my avatar, learning or getting perspective. Do you see? But if my intention is to understand who you are and learn from you and get a perspective from you, then that's something I need to do.
Yes. Right? Yes.
But again, like, when it comes to scaling my influence, if there was 1 million, entrepreneurs talking to me and getting access to all my knowledge capital over the last 10 years, like that, I wouldn't care about. Though I'd be like, go.
So, yes, so you'd have that interaction, I suppose, as opposed to just creating videos, you'd have the interaction. As opposed to just having this video and putting it out on LinkedIn and whatever, and just doing the usual things. With your avatar being there, you'd be on 24 hours all the time, so someone could actually interact with you on some kind of level. And would the avatar then download whatever happened in that conversation on another server, and would you be able to access it if you wanted it? I mean, okay, now it's becoming complicated, right?
Yeah. It can get complicated. I do think we'll all have our own personal AIs, and I do think we'll have a Neuralink chip in there at some point, and it will be trained on everything that you are, like your entire body of work. And it will represent you, and it will also protect you. So, for instance, if you think about cybercrime and getting hacked online, I mean, I get phishing emails every fucking day. It's actually unreal. It's literally unreal. And I'm like, if I had a personal AI, it would just get rid of that, because I have to report to Microsoft every single time. But they don't seem to stop it. It's like, come on.
No, that's the point.
But you mean, what if you could live forever? What if you could have your personal AI that was trained on everything, and my son, let's say I died in 5 years' time, and my son could talk to me.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes.
So then
That would be
technically
cool.
you are kind of living forever. So that's why I keep saying, I don't do podcasting to make money. I do it to make a difference first and foremost. But then when I look back on all the shows that I've done, and I'll probably be on like Joe Rogan 2,000, 3,000, who knows, at some point, because I can never stop doing it. It's not part of my identity. But if you could take all those interviews, if you think and load it up into an AI, you can create a legacy that's everlasting. I mean, even if there was no AI and my son Googled Matt Brown, you could listen to all these interviews that I do on all these shows and get a real sense for how I thought, and so it is legacy building. And I think people forget that what you put out into the world is literally your legacy. You're building that thing. And so, yeah. And just an interesting fun fact, less than 0.2% of podcasts in the entire world get past 700 episodes. So, wow. And there are some I was on a show the other day and that was shared with me. So then I'm like, I'm already in the 0.2%. So
wow,
now
it's pretty awesome.
How do you get into the 0.1%? You just keep going.
You just keep going.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think once you start this, it becomes like an addiction. It's just like it becomes so exciting because you meet people like, what are the odds that we would have ever had this conversation anyway? But besides that, it's the growth as well that for yourself and the impact that you have on all the people, everyone, and the influence. It's just like, how can you stop? But yet there are people that do, right? So
yeah, well, they stopped because they were focused on the wrong thing. They focused on why did I only get 32 downloads this episode? I've been doing this for 6 months. Surely I should be getting more than 32. And so, it takes a long time to build anything of any kind of value. And so they quit. Also, I care less about the 32 downloads as an example. I care about the one download, the one view, the one person that listened to what I had to say or what you had to say and then decided to make a difference or decided to persevere or decided to start a business or whatever. And I've said that for years. And I get it's so weird. Like, you don't know just how much you're influencing people. I mean, when I was in South Africa, it's so funny. I do a lot of cold calling. Obviously, a CEO, friends of CEO, it's a very easy way to open up a sales opportunity. So I was like, I phoned this one guy and I'm like, hey, my name's Matt Brown. He goes, stop. I said, are you the Matt Brown that's always going live on LinkedIn? And then I'd go to a conference and people were like, dude, I've listened to all. I remember I'd only done 52 episodes at the time, and I'd go to a conference and some guy would be like, dude, I've listened to all 52 of your interviews, bro, and I'm going to start a podcast too one day. And I'm like, great, you do that and come talk to me in 6 months. Because I know there's a very high probability that they'll start and then they'll quit.
Yes, yes.
And so if you're going to influence anyone, you have to just be relentless at that. You can never, ever quit. You know what I mean? No matter, and I have wanted to quit, let's be honest. I'm like, fuck, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?
Right.
And then you're like, oh, that's why.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, it's if you're going to look to elevate others, which is what influence is about, then that's something you don't turn off. That's something that's who you are. You must be that and only do that.
Yes, I agree with you. And it's funny with, I know the vanity, those metrics, sometimes I look at it and I go, oh, anyway, but that's besides the point. But what I've seen now is that there's some podcasts, episodes that I did, or YouTube episodes, whatever, that I did last year that people are starting to watch again. And then you think, whoa, so maybe I am having some impact. Or when someone comes to you and says, wow, thank you, I watched this episode of 2 years ago. Well, he's about 2 years. 2 years ago, and it's like, whoa, that was great, and this made an impact in my life. So I think you're right. That is worth everything, because who knows, what they'll take out of that and change their lives.
Yeah, it's this idea of there's no such thing as an idle conversation, you know, because like we get like 11,000 streams on Spotify alone every month.
Wow.
You know, so who the hell are they?
Yes.
You know, but
yes.
It would be nice to know them. But like I've had another one, like this CEO comes up into the show and he's like, Matt, his name's also Matt. Matt Sari, CEO of Women's Solutions. And he says, Matt, dude, I've listened to like, you know, so many of the secrets of failure. I feel like I know you. Isn't that so cool? Like someone who feels like they know who you are just by what you put out into the world. You know, another one, I had Jordan Zimmerman is a billionaire and his company does like $4 billion a year. So he says to me, Matt, I don't do podcasts. But when I saw you had done 800 interviews, I knew that you're the type of guy I want to have a talk with. You see what I'm saying? Yes. So if I didn't have that body of work, if I did quit in, you know, episode 430, would I have that relationship with Jordan Zimmerman? Probably not. You see? And would he have come on my show and would his story, you know what I mean? Like if I imagine that's because it's now in my book. You see, so if I hadn't persevered, he wouldn't be in my book. I wouldn't have the relationship with him, and I wouldn't have the influence I have, or been able, you know, to use his story to influence others.
Yes, yes.
So that's the perspective shift that people need to, I believe people should try and adopt, which is, you know, what am I going to lose if I decide not to persevere? What are you really losing? Because yes, it's hard. Building anything's hard. I mean, like the last 4 months for me have been incredibly tough, you know, and but we're all going through this cycle of suffering, and so, but you just have to sit in your purpose, not in your fear. Yes. You have to sit in your purpose and just keep tracking, like one foot in front of the other. You know, it's like if you want to move a mountain, you move small stones. But people look at the mountain and they go, "Oh fuck, it's too hard." So then they quit. You know, if I wanted to be Joe Rogan, I would have quit a long time ago.
Yes.
But that's what people do. They go into, they go, I want to be the next this, or Tim Ferriss, I want to be the next this, and I want to have 1 million followers, and I want to do this, and I want to be like those guys. It's like, no, just be yourself, you know, and make your own difference and contribution in your own way, however big it is or however small it is.
Yes, I agree with you. I think comparison kills. Comparison kills you. It kills you internally and just kills you, you know, for yourself, for your work, for everything, because you can never be the other person, and you never know the full story anyway behind that person. So I like that a lot. I have to ask you now about freedom. So has Matt found freedom?
What kind of freedom?
I don't know. You tell me. What does freedom mean to you?
That's a good thing. If you ever get asked a difficult question, ask back. No, I don't think so here. I don't think so. I found a measure of freedom, but I don't think I'm free from like myself. You know, I think I'm free to say what I want to say, like as I mentioned with my show and that. But I think when it comes to me personally, no. I'm my own worst enemy, 100%. And I also have like huge standards, you know. I put lots of pressure on myself. I'm like, fuck it, you know, you got to do this by this date and blah, blah, otherwise you're that. So no. And that's definitely a part of myself that I have to work on. But you know, financial freedom to move, freedom, you know, it's like, yeah, I can do what I want when I want. But no, in terms of my mind, absolutely not. And that unfortunately is like a huge weakness for me, you know, because I think true freedom is being able to live with yourself in a way where you're just, you know, free flowing and you're not kind of stuck, and you don't put yourself into the hurt locker for no reason, you know. So no, but you know, it's a journey, and like maybe in 10 years' time, probably. We'll go on a mushroom journey for 7 days. There's all these retreats now where you can figure out your trauma and all that kind of shit. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe it'll help. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But as I say, it's just one day at a time.
So have you ever thought it's not a bad thing to just throw away that whip?
I think it's necessary. I actually think it's necessary, to whip yourself into. It's like you get up, you wake up in the morning. What do you say to yourself? And you're like, oh, I don't want to work today. Or do you say to yourself, geez, I really want to go after it today. I'm super passionate about it. You see what I mean? And so if you don't whip yourself, sometimes like, listen here, pal, you're going to do this interview today. I know you've done 8, but you're going to do this one more. Because again, as I mentioned, it's the Jordan Zimmerman thing. And so time's finite. So I think if you're a victim to your situation and you don't learn to break through your misery, then you must learn to be happy in your misery. So, there's a lot of self-work. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, Your Inner Game. That was my first one. And that was all about the inner game, right? The suffering, basically. And, shared stories which were crazy about people who had overcome their own shit,
Yes.
Like people who were, like Rusty Labuschagne was put into a maximum security prison in Zimbabwe for a murder he didn't commit under horrendous conditions, shouldn't have survived. But he did, and now he speaks about it. You see what I mean? So he could have not chosen to speak about it, but he does, because his story is powerful. Because when you hear it, you're like, oh shit, my life's really not that bad. Exactly. It's really not. But I think we are always stuck inside the bottle of our own lives, and sometimes what you need is someone to show you the label, So I'm a big believer in therapy. Definitely go and talk to someone, mentorship, masterminds, friendship, anything, phone a friend, dude. Ask for help. Problem is, people let their pride get in the way. They don't want to ask for help.
That's the biggest thing.
They don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to go to therapy, dude. Talk about my problems. I'm a man. But you should, and you must, because if you don't, you bottle that shit up, and then it all comes out one day. And that's the situation you don't want to be in. It's kind of like you want to let it out more frequently so that you don't have this massive fall off and then this massive explosion. You see what I'm saying? But especially in men, like, we're not taught to deal with that stuff. We're taught to suck it up and don't cry. Cowboys don't cry in front of their horses.
Exactly.
And all this stuff. So then when you get to your sort of mid-40s, because I believe life's also about addition and subtraction. So in the first 40 years of your life, you're actually adding. It's addition. You're adding wives, kids, finances, stuff. But then when you get past 40, then it's about subtraction. Your mother dies, your friends die. And then suddenly it's like, oh, fuck, what do I do with this stuff? I'm actually feeling things. And I don't have the coping skills to manage that.
Yeah.
So now what? Now you're in a car crash that you can't control. And that's powerlessness. That's not freedom. So to be free, you have to be free in your mind.
So how do you get your power back?
I think if you can't just contribute, do something for someone else, man. That's what I think. Because then it's like when your kid dies. When your kid is born, you realize that you're not the center of the universe anymore. And so your whole life changes very quickly. Suddenly you focused on that, not this. But I've just found, like, do something for someone, gets you out of that mindset of you being a victim, makes you feel good. Also, if you're inclined to get out of your head, you get into your body, go for a run, lift weights, get into a cold bath, get into a hot sauna, do something, but get into your body, because it's a cycle, it's a pattern. If you can break the pattern, then you can start to unlock little bits of freedom over time, you see, and then, you add them all together over a year, then suddenly you're like, oh shit, I'm quite free,
So it's a process.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to speak to you in, no, not 10 years, maybe in a few, in like maybe a year's time, and see how free you've become since now, right, Matt? That could be pretty cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. So let me know. I'll let you know when I've got some different perspective to share.
That'll be pretty cool. So tell me, Matt, where can people find you besides LinkedIn?
Anywhere, just Google Matt Brown Show. You'll find me. You'll find me. Probably more on LinkedIn or in the podcast, YouTube, stuff like that.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Any last words about breaking fear, finding freedom, or anything really?
Yeah. Plato said, a man who doesn't cultivate his own influence will ultimately be ruled by lesser men. So think about your influence and how you're cultivating that.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to end the show. That's really food for thought. And wow, that can go into that could even go into another show straight away. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. This has been really, really awesome. And I'm sure we'll chat somewhere around on LinkedIn. Thank you, everybody. If you're looking for Matt, you'll find him on LinkedIn. All his details will be at the bottom in the description box. Go to Amazon and check out his books, What Secret of Influence and Secret of #Fail. This has been awesome. Thank you, Matt. And we'll see you all soon. Bye.